keeps going by and looking in.
Today is October 8th, 2012. My name is Teresa Larson, and I'm speaking with Wayne Peterson here in Story City. Do I have your permission to record your face and voice for our oral history project?
Yes,
Okay, good, thank you. Tell me when and where you were born.
I was born in Ames, Iowa, back in the Dark Ages. And
How dark?
1929,
Mm-hmm.
and lived in Ames ever since.
What elementary school did you go to?
Went to Roosevelt, Central, and Ames High.
Did you live in the Roosevelt neighborhood?
We did.
What was your address?
Boy, you're really taxing my brain.
Oh, how about a street?
1123 Roosevelt.
Oh, well done.
And then we moved over to 18th Street,
Mm-hmm.
and I finished up at Central.
When you were a young child going to Roosevelt School, the city kind of ended where, about 13th Street or so?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the end. We had Victory Gardens
You had Victory Gardens. Tell me about that.
on 13th Street, north of 13th Street.
Mm-hmm.
There's a farm up there,
Mm-hmm.
and during the war, we had a big garden, and we raised vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
It was a nice community. More kids than parents.
Well, what did some of those kids do for fun at that time?
Just play games, pom-pom pull away, and what's some of that, I can't think of some of the other ones, but every night there would be, in the summertime, there would be a bunch of kids around a telephone pole, light pole, and we played games. That's all there was.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have money to go to the shows,
Mm-hmm.
and Roosevelt was great. It had a good playground, so we played a lot of soccer down there.
Mm-hmm.
So I hate to see him tear Roosevelt down, but I hate to see him put $4 million or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
because things change.
That's right.
And
So you went to Roosevelt, and then you went to Central Junior High, the older building, and then to the high school?
the old building,
Mm-hmm.
and then graduated, got rid of that
Mm-hmm.
eighth grade, 7th, 8th, 9th,
Mm-hmm.
and then went to Ames High, 10, 11, and 12.
And when you went to Ames High, what were some of the traditions at Ames High at the time, things that you remember?
Nah, football.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't play sports. I was lighting for the auditorium. I ran the lights for the auditorium for, I think, almost 3 years. And that's about all I did. I wasn't very active in social things. And
One reason may have been that you were working.
I started working for Dad at the store when I was in about 8th grade. And I worked 1 period a day. I know, 2 periods a day, but 1 period I went to school, and then I got out 5th and 6th period and went to the store and worked. And I think that was probably the first DECA program that came about, because it wasn't long after that. But there's some other kids that were doing it, but
Now, did your dad have to convince school officials to let you come and work in the store? Do you know anything about that process?
I don't know.
But it sounded like it was good for you. I mean, you enjoyed that.
Wonderful. Gee whiz. I never did like school anyway, so I'd rather go down and work at the store.
So let's talk about that store, because that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to talk to you. You are the second generation to have owned, tell us the name of the store.
Emerhoff's Footwear.
Okay.
My dad started the store December of 1941. And I went to work for him probably 41, maybe in 44, 45.
And I want to take it back just another step, because the store that your father had in 1941, did he not purchase that from somebody else?
Yes, he bought it from a guy, his boss, was Cook's Bootery at that time. And he worked for Cook's Bootery several years before he bought the store.
And was Cook's Bootery in roughly the same location where Emerhoff's is now?
Okay, we have 3 locations now. We have 3 storefronts. The farthest storefront to the west was the first Emerhoff's.
And that was actually Cook's Bootery.
That was Cook's Bootery.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think if there are several other shoe stores. At one time, there was a lot of shoe stores in Ames.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
When your dad was in business, do you know how many stores, like in the 30s or the 40s on Main Street, there were shoe stores?
4. There were 5 shoe stores. 5, 6 shoe stores. So things change.
Mm-hmm.
And
Now, did they each kind of have a different focus? How did they?
oh yeah,
They did. Mm-hmm.
everybody sort of catered to their own clientele.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, there's no loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of loyal customers, but
Mm-hmm.
by and large, it is like it was 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So, your dad, when did he come to Ames?
Oh man, let's see, he must have come to Ames in 1920.
Mm-hmm. And did he start working in shoe stores at the
He worked for
time?
a shoe store called Bauge, B-A-U-G-E,
Okay.
and they were at the end of Douglas. There were store buildings there. Now it's a walk-through. And there was Bauge, and then right next door to him was a jewelry store, and I can't think of the name of that. But anyway, those other stores are totally gone.
Mm-hmm.
And
So really, Emerhoff's and which was Cook's Bootery, you've lasted the longest
oh yeah,
of those original stores that were on Main Street.
yeah. See,
That's quite a run.
41, and what is this? This is 12.
Mm-hmm. So how did your dad obtain Cook's Bootery?
Well, he worked for Charlie Cook, that was the guy's name, for,
Mhm.
8 or 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he told Charlie, after a few years, that he wanted to buy the store, whatever
Mm-hmm.
he sold out. And that's what happened. Dad did it in December.
Mm-hmm.
And he had three full-time employees.
Mm-hmm.
And we just had that real narrow store. It was only 10 foot wide. But we crammed a lot of shoes in there.
So if you started working for your dad, you said, roughly 8th grade, you're maybe 13, 14, something like that. What did your dad ask you to do during those?
I got to do all the stuff they didn't want to do. I swept the floors, washed the windows, unpacked shoes. And I didn't start selling shoes right away. I did all that other stuff, and then it eventually worked in.
Mm-hmm.
I worked putting shoes away that the guys would take out of the box. I had to put them back in, especially when the 17 stamp, shoe stamp came up. Well,
Now tell me about that.
well, during the war, you had shoe stamps, and periodically they would cancel those stamps out, and everybody wanted, if they hadn't used their stamp, They wanted to use their stamp because they didn't want to lose the chance of having a pair of shoes. So it was bedlam. We were busy from morning till night. And all I did was put shoes back. So it was quite an experience.
And do you think all the other stores in Main Street had that same rush when people were trying to use their shoe
I would
stamps?
think so. We all had our own clientele.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think so. You know, it's just like gasoline stamps,
Mm-hmm.
stamps for tires. You had all these stamps, food stamps, sugar stamps.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very exciting.
And was there a certain time of year these would come due or expire?
As a government, whenever the government decided that they needed to do something, why?
People wanted to use them up.
Oh yeah, you couldn't let those things go to waste because once that time limit was there, you had to sell it
Mm-hmm.
or throw it away.
Mm-hmm. And did you, as a merchant, because I don't understand this, I'm sorry if I sound a little dumb, did you get reimbursed for some of it? Or that just gave them the opportunity to buy?
Whenever we bought shoes from the manufacturer, if, say we bought 100 pair of shoes, we had a checkbook for stamps, and we deposited our stamps in the bank, just like our money. So whenever we buy 50 pair of shoes, my dad would write a check for the cash, and then a check for number of shoes that he purchased.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really a good system.
And you probably had, were you a family shoe store or your work boot shoe store, or what was your focus?
Family shoe store.
Your family shoe store.
Men's, women's, and children's shoes.
Men's, women's, and children's, okay.
And our forte was women's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't have men's because we weren't big enough, and eventually we just dropped the men's shoes and just catered to women and children. Because, 10-foot wide store, we just didn't have room for a lot of stock.
Right. Let's say in the 1940s, how did your dad decide what to carry in the store? How did he choose his inventory?
That's something that is hard to explain because either you have it or you don't have it. And my dad had a special technique to buy shoes. He was considered one of the really good shoemen in the state. He could sit down and dream up a shoe. Back then, everything was made for you.
For the store?
For the store. So he would sit down and I would go, I was amazed how he would take pieces of leather, swatches, and put a shoe together, different colors. So
He must have had some artistic design.
He was good. He was very good.
Mm-hmm.
Not much of it grew off on me, although I got pretty good, and then eventually everything was
Changed. Yeah.
changed.
Yeah.
Now, everything is pre-made.
Mm-hmm. What did you decide to do in terms of learning the business? How did you learn the business from your dad? How do you learn to be a shoe man, as you call it?
Dad took me under his wing and showed me how to run a store and how to sell a pair of shoes. And it's just being there.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't, you don't.
Soaking it in.
You don't look it out of a book.
You don't look it up on the internet.
No. And, well, the shoe stores today, to me, are shoe stores.
They're different.
We're one of the few stores that carries a lot of the old idiosyncrasies of merchandising.
Mm-hmm.
And, but that's because Mark, my son, came to the store and I did the same with him, and Dad with did with me. Now his son is come into the store, and
So you have 4 generations now.
this will be 4 generations.
Well, let's go back to this idea of, what styles you want. Did salesmen come by, or a couple times a year?
They come by twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year, and they
Mhm.
brought in cases of shoes, and they had, you could just pick those out.
Now, is it true they brought women's shoes, but like in tiny sizes? I have a friend who had a tiny foot, and she says, I love those sample shoes. Is that true?
Yeah, all the shoes that the salesman carried were 4Bs. And the reason for that is it didn't take up a lot of room. And at one time, we carried 4Bs and 5Bs.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't think Mark carries much under a 6 because everybody's foot's big.
Right.
He carries 12s now for women. 16s for men. It's amazing how it's changed.
So the salesman would come by, and you could look at their offerings.
Mhm.
So that way that was a way to find out about the trends.
Yeah, and you buy, and then you buy what you think you can sell.
Mm-hmm.
You have what do I want to say? You have a business that you're angling for this type of woman. Maybe she's a high fashion gal, or a woman that's a worker, and you buy shoes for that type of occupation.
And you knew your clientele. You knew about how many people would come in and buy more like comfort-oriented shoes, and how many women would buy high heels and that sort of
You had to know your customer.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. And you depended upon your salesman to tell you, because you couldn't do it all yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What they were telling you about how these gals were leading their lives or whatever.
Mhm.
Right. So you had salesman visit. Did you ever go to shows or?
Yes, that's one thing we always did.
Mm-hmm.
We usually had shows in Minneapolis, Des Moines, Chicago, and my dad and I would always go to those shows. And we would buy shoes there.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time the salesman came to the store.
I want to pick up that thread of your dad designing shoes for just a second, because this is new to me. I didn't know that an individual shoe store. Could you tell me about the brands that maybe that you were able to actually design your own shoe?
Oh, any of them.
Really?
Brands that you wouldn't even know. Maybe stop and think of brands that we had back then that we have now. I don't think.
Can't think of any?
I don't. Women's I don't. Men's we still carry floor spans. And
It seems like Selby's were multicolored shoes. I don't know if those are
Selby was one of our big shoes. We were one of the biggest Selby account in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And that all went for naught. And they went out of business, and that really hurt us. But
Did you have any periodicals or magazines that you would read to kind of stay up on trends?
yeah, we had we took a couple of magazines, Footwear News,
Mm-hmm.
and another one called Boot and Shoe Recorder, and those were national publications. And yes, we read those from cover to cover,
Mm-hmm.
and tried to learn. You have to learn your
Sure.
stuff.
Now, Ames is kind of a middle-of-the-road community, and so you'd probably see trends that were happening on the coasts. How long did you think it would take to get to Ames?
Ames was pretty good.
Yeah.
We usually were within a year.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, a lot of those California styles never materialized.
Mm-hmm.
Ames was fairly cosmopolitan,
Uh-huh.
but we have just a lot of our business comes from Story City and Roland and Randall and
Mm-hmm.
Boone and Nevada. Oh, we went all over the Midwest. We went
Mhm.
out 50 miles in every direction.
And you could tell that by the checks people wrote.
Right.
Because when you started in the business, it was cash
And checks,
and checks.
yeah. And then a credit card, I know. I was running the store, this is, and I can't even remember the year, but they were going to chain downtown Betterment, was going to have a speaker come on something new called a credit card. And I was telling Dad I wanted to go to, he says, you're not going to go, and we're not going to have credit cards. That is not going to last. And I said, Dad, I said, I'm going to go, and I'm going to go with an open mind. Sure enough, it was, and sure enough, when I come back to the store, we weren't going to do it. But in a couple of months, we had credit cards and MasterCard and Visa.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's practically all credit card.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Mark, and of course the banks charge us. That's an astronomical amount of money that
Mm-hmm.
the banks get. But it's a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of people carry much cash in because it doesn't sell.
Let's talk a little bit about Main Street, because you were on Main Street for a long time. Did Main Street merchants, how did they decide when they wanted to be open, say at night, for example?
We had downtown Betterment.
Mm-hmm.
I was active in downtown Betterment for quite a few years. And Fred Swank was in there, and Art Kettleston, and some names from the past. And we would meet maybe once every couple of months and hash over problems, and we always fought on hours. Some people wanted more hours, and some people wanted less. But you know, you always come to a congenial
Mm-hmm.
hour.
What other things did you guys discuss?
Advertising, that was a big thing. And we fought with the city over parking meters. I was a big parking meter man. I thought that was the best thing that ever happened. And that little nickel didn't hurt anybody, but there's something that people fought all the time. But we were firm. We had a nice, cohesive group of men, and there was only about 4 or 5 of us. We kind of run that whole Main Street, and what we said went. I shouldn't say it that way, but we did. We controlled it.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's changing, and I don't like the way it's going.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark says, just don't worry about it, Dad. There's nothing you can do.
Now, concerning the Main Street, you mentioned like Swanks and Car Hardware, and what were some of your other, let me ask it this way. Who did you think was your biggest competitor when you were in business?
Oh, we had Lazy M
Mm-hmm.
and Brandberg and all. That's,
Brandberg and all, that became something else, didn't it? Did that become?
well, Brown's come up and
Yes, Brown Spotted, yeah.
and the Hardy's shoes were there,
Mm-hmm.
Boggs. So we had a nice
And-
group of men.
And so you guys were all colleagues, but you were competitors.
Sure.
How did you, I mean, you obviously survived. How did you set yourself apart?
It's competition, breeds concern about how you're going to survive. You do the things that you need to do to survive. And you have to, somewhere down the line, get some honesty in your business. Make people feel comfortable when they come in your store, and make your word worth something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it.
So you wanted to demonstrate you were trustworthy and you cared about the customer, and that was your calling card, so to speak.
Yeah,
Well, tell me about, so I'm your customer, and I'm walking in your store. So how do you start as a salesman? How do you, what do you say first, or what happens next?
Well, good morning, or good afternoon, or hello.
Mm-hmm.
It rattles me when people come in the store and nobody says a word to them.
Mm-hmm.
And most stores, they don't say a word.
Mm-hmm.
They don't say good morning, hello, goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something we try. You gotta, when somebody comes to your house, you say hello,
Mm-hmm.
or good morning, or excuse me, good afternoon. But you have to greet people when they, and then you have to show them that you're genuinely concerned about what you want, if you can fit them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very simple.
Mm-hmm. And so, so I'm strolling around. Do you try to get me to sit down?
Yeah, that's the big thing is
In the shoe business?
that's why we have fitness stools. We sit people down, and then we measure every foot and get the shoes and put them on. And today that's a lost thing in most stores.
Mm-hmm.
People stand leaning on the counter or leaning on a box or something. And of course, most of these kids that are working in these stores,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know sick of them about shoes or anything, any products they're selling,
Mm-hmm.
which is sad.
Yeah. So, when you've got somebody seated, probably part of it is if you get them to sit down, I hate to put it this way, they're sort of like they're captive. That's the first things you have to do.
They can't try in their shoes walking around. Yeah, sit them down, and most of the people want to
Well, of course, of course.
And we had so much regular customer.
Mm-hmm.
People, even now, we're staying up in this nursing home, old folks home. Why, there's just a lot of people walking in, and when we first came, I knew them.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't put a name on them. My memory isn't as good, but I've got most of them now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they remember Emerhoffs. Everybody remembers Emerhoffs. It's a common name.
And that's a unique name. That was actually your dad's first name.
That was my dad's
Well, actually, third name.
third name.
Okay, well, your dad's exact name was?
Marion Palmer Emerhoff Peterson.
I bet you've never seen another Emerhoff store.
We've
Ever.
never found another Emerhoff. We've looked, but it's just, it's Norwegian.
Mm-hmm.
And Dad didn't want to use that Marion Palmer Emerhoff Peterson. He didn't want to call the store Peterson Shoes. That's too common. So Emerhoffs, people know that name from way, way back.
Mm-hmm.
And being a college town, we had a lot of gals and guys who went to college here. They moved away and they couldn't get the narrow sizes that we carried. And well, still, we mail shoes out every day of the week to somebody in East Coast, West Coast, South that can't find a shoe because they only carry wide widths, or these people all have very narrow sizes. So,
I hadn't thought about this being a college town, so you really had some clientele constantly turning over.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
And we have people that, Mark does it now more than I did, is they call him and he'll send them half a dozen pairs of shoes. And about 10 days later, sometimes all 6 pair come back, sometimes 2 pair come back. But he knows those customers that are looking for shoes, and most of them, they've done this before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just an extra service that you do.
Now tell me, as the economy started to change and there were more stores that were bigger, how did you as a small store, did you have any buying consortiums or anything like that helped you get inventory maybe at a lower price, or?
No, we didn't, we're not big enough.
Mhm.
We, at one time, in the state of Iowa, there was 12 sons whose father all started the stores.
Really?
And we formed a group.
Huh.
They're from all over, just Iowa.
Mhm.
Spencer and, Marshalltown, Mason City.
Mhm.
And we'd meet a couple times a year, and we had some buys where we grouped. That's when Italian shoes were basically all makeup. And we'd go in and we'd buy X number, hundreds of pairs, and then they would ship in individual stores.
Mhm.
So we had a lot of fun. And Mark's the only one, Emerhoff's the only one that's left.
Wow.
All the rest of them are all gone by the wayside.
My goodness. Well, is there anything else you'd like to tell me about Main Street or running a shoe store that I haven't asked you?
Well, yeah, probably, I don't know, there's really nothing you can do to change Main Street. I don't want to change Main Street. So many people want to modernize it and do away with the meters. I just don't like to. Of course, I'm too darn old, so I'll let Mark worry about that, and Mike will be the next one down. You know.
Now, I want to get, I just thought of something I wanted to pick up on. You had said that your dad had artistic talent, but it seems to me that you also had that sense of expanding, because you expanded the store. Did you have to convince your dad to do that? You did.
The first expansion was for our women's store.
Mm-hmm.
We had decided that I pushed Mark and Dad as far as I could. And we were just out rolling at a 10-foot store. So where our women's store is, Firestone had a store in there.
Mm-hmm.
A guy by the name of Bill Faust. Your folks probably know him. He was in the realty business. And he wanted Dad to rent this building. And I finally pushed Dad into getting this store, so we remodeled it. And our business just thrived. We put in men's shoes in, and our business just thrived. And one of the kids that worked for us just passed away, Don Gustafson. Don worked for us all the time. He went to college. And then he worked full-time. So
He did well.
he did really well. And I couldn't go to his wedding. I can't climb stairs. His wedding, his funeral.
Mm-hmm.
But what was I going to say?
You were talking about expanding the store.
Yeah, then when I took over the store, I bought the store from Dad in 70, 71. Bexall Drug. Two ladies that owned the store, or the building, wanted me to put a store in. And I didn't have any money, but finally, they felt so sorry for me. They made it attractive enough. I did. So then I remodeled that. Well, then, where our first store was, that was a dress shop, and then it was a Merle Norman Cosmetics, and I wanted to put a handbag store, and Jones Luggage came into town, so I didn't do it. But We've now got the 3 stores. And I wanted to get the other side with Jameson Clothing. That was an old time store. They were in before my dad. But I never got a chance to buy that. But we're happy with 3 stores.
I am going to ask you another question that occurs to me. Being on Main Street as long as you have, were there any big events that you remember on Main Street, or anything that happened that, you know, affected the commerce or affected your lives?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Really, with college being here, it's that sort of stabilized everything. I don't think so.
I guess the only thing that occurs to my mind is the spring of 1970 with the blast at City Hall.
Well, I forgot about that. Yeah, that was just this.
Did that affect you at all? Did it break your windows out or anything?
No, but we heard it. That was only half a block from our store.
That's right.
So, I forgot about that.
You'd run out of the store and try and figure out what was happening?
But it didn't take long. No, but it really, that was one of the active.
Yeah.
Just try to think if there's anything else.
Well, don't trouble yourself, but if you think of something, you can tell me later. So I'll just, again, the wide open question, is there anything else you'd like to tell me about running a shoe store or working on Main Street that you'd like to share?
I think that's just about it.
Well, Mr. Peterson, thank you so much for sharing your memories with me today. I really appreciate it, and congratulations on 4 generations of owning a shoe store.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, we're very happy.